rasika devotees. Rasa means engaged in the highest loving affairs of God. So Narayana Maharaj began to misrepresent that these criminals and gangsters were engaged in the highest service to God, and they were experiencing the highest love of God. Meanwhile, another devotee named Jagannath Sutta wrote a paper exposing the women's collection parties, which were many times women in those parties were being beaten up, sometimes raped, and so on. But instead of congratulating him for writing this paper, the Acharya board chastised him and said he was a nonsense mischief maker. And so Jagannath Sutta sent his article to the Los Angeles Times. So in other words, suppression was being used all the time. To anyone trying to expose these things was being suppressed. In 1980, the problems were becoming so prominent that even the outside people understood what was going on, and therefore an article was printed in the Los Angeles Times, Krishna, a Kingdom in Disarray. That was the title of the article. So even the ordinary person on the street could understand that the Krishna movement was undergoing a sort of a meltdown under the heavy-handed management of Sridhar Maharaj, Narayana Maharaj, and the false gurus. This was a repressive, violent, criminal operation. But Sridhar at that time, he had a plan, as usual. He was going to fix everything. He said they, meaning the false gurus, they will dig their own graves. If someone's getting beaten up on the street, you shouldn't stop and try to help that person. There's no problem there. That person will be digging his own grave. The person that he's killing will be digging their own grave. Sridhar's idea is you just don't help anybody after you set up the crime. You set up a crime, and when someone becomes a victim, then you don't help the victim. You just sit back and let them fall into a grave. So Sridhar Maharaj set up the false gurus, helped establish the false gurus, and when all the problems were manifesting, he says, well, it's not really my problem. They're just digging their own grave. The victims are digging their own grave. And this is why the mass child molesting was going on, because Sridhar Maharaj just said, well, these children are just going into a grave, and I'm going to be shoveling dirt on top of them. I've got a shovel. I'm helping dig the grave too. What's the problem? Let's just dig a grave and toss all of the members of ISKCON into the grave. This was his idea. So nothing should be done to halt the beatings, the molesting, the murders, and so on. And Sridhar also said it's in the hands of God. So yet Sridhar Maharaj authorizes people to go out and rob a bank, and when people are being shot in the bank, Sridhar Maharaj just puts his hands up in the air and says, well, it's in the hands of God, I'm out of here. Not my problem. Rather amazingly, a follower of Sridhar, a current follower, his name is Pusta Krishna, Paul Dasic, I think his name is. He wrote me a letter very recently. It is now January 2006, and he is saying the same thing. He says, my idea of protecting the victims of all these criminal activities is crazy. Crazy. It's a crazy thing to try to help molestation and, robbing, beating, people being hit over the head with baseball bats. Anyone who tries to stop that is crazy. You should just sit back, let everybody fall into the grave. But even an ordinary person like Jane Wallace, who was a reporter for the CBS News, she says, wait a minute, doesn't the Bhagavad Gita, your scripture, doesn't it say that the devotees are supposed to protect the innocent and defenseless? Isn't this the aim and object of your philosophy? So even she understood that this Sridhar Maharaj has no idea. But Prabhupada confirmed that. He says, my godbrothers are 4th class. They have no brain how to understand Bhagavad Gita. Prabhupada says 4th and 10th class men cannot understand Bhagavad Gita. So the first principle of Bhagavad Gita is to defend and help the innocent, whereas Sridhar Maharaj, the governing body, Narayana Maharaj, they just say, well, just toss people into a grave. Who cares? So by 1983, Hansadutta ordered all of his followers to go down to Los Angeles and protest and picket outside of the Los Angeles temple, complaining that the Acharya board was no longer fully surrendered to Sridhar Maharaj because Hansadutta was getting more and more arrests and criminal activities going on at his temple, and the Acharya board was just trying to distance themselves from Hansadutta. And so Hansadutta was complaining, they no longer recognize me as Jesus, they're bogus. So notice what's going on here. The governing body has emergency meetings. They'll spend $100,000 trying to figure out how to cover up Jai Tirtha's drug problem. Hansadutta will spend, $10,000 sending a whole bunch of followers to Los Angeles, have them make public complaints on television and everything that he's not being recognized as Jesus. But no one's complaining. The children are being molested, people are being beaten up, and so on and so forth. There's no effort whatsoever. No meetings, no emergency committee is being formed to figure out these kind of problems. The only problem is I'm not being worshipped enough over here. I'm not being recognized as Jesus over here. I don't have a big enough seat over here. I don't have a big enough car over here. This other guru's taking money from my zone. Let's have a meeting about it. These types of things were the only concern. And by 1984, more people were trying to be voted in as gurus. For example, Tripurari, Tom Beaudry, he was trying to get voted in as a member of the GBC's Acharya board. So I challenged him. I says, why do you need the vote of homosexual child molesters in order to become Jesus? If you're Jesus, you are Jesus. Why do you need some homosexual child molester to vote you in as Jesus? And he followed me down the stairs and started screaming, this man is a demon. Nobody should talk to this man. But later on, he became known as the guru of the gays. He had a whole bunch of gay disciples. He has sympathy for the homosexuals and the child molesters, and he wanted to get their official rubber stamp. He's very proud that he was trying to be voted in by the homosexual pedophiles to get a guru rubber stamp. Even now, even still today, his followers are complaining that I should not have challenged his desire to be rubber stamped as Jesus by homosexuals and child molesters. So, in other words, if I don't worship child molesters as my messiahs, I'm a deviant, according to Tripurari, and that's still his philosophy even today, nonetheless, notwithstanding that his philosophy molested thousands of children. In 1985, Narayana Maharaja of Mathura emerged as the new big advisor for the governing body, false gurus, and he said they needed to have a guru reform. Narayana Maharaj thinks that when you're a guru, you become a criminal and you need to go to reform school, and you need to be correct. So Jesus needs to be arrested by the police for carrying a machine gun. This is his idea. But many emergency meetings were being held by people like Satsvarup Das Goswami, Rabindra Swarup, Tribakram, Prithu, and others, where they decided to, first of all, reinstate their biggest child molester guru, Bhavananda, and call him their Vishnupad. That was their idea of a reform. They reinstated their child molester guru. Simultaneously, they voted in more gurus. At that time, Nirantara Das, Nick D'Angelo, sang a parody song, There's Homo Sex Being Worshipped in the Holy Dham. So it was widely known that the false gurus and the Sridhar Narayan, BP Puri guru lineage was worshipping child molesters as their messiahs. Meanwhile, several prominent devotees at that time complained to the governing body that they have given the gift of homosexual child molester worship to Lord Chaitanya for his 500th anniversary. So again, it was widely known that this is going on, the worship of child molesters. Next, once the reformers took control, like Prithu and Rabindra Swarup and so on and so forth, the first thing they did was to excommunicate Sulochan and myself for our not worshipping their child molesters. They said this was wrong and we should be removed from ISKCON properties, and moreover, Rameshwar said that Sulochan would be dead meat on the hook. In other words, Rameshwar was openly threatening to kill Sulochan and myself and others, and this is the kind of person that the Narayan, Sridhar, BP Puri Maharaj like to worship as their sum total of the demigods, a person who's violently beating up devotees with baseball bats, threatening to kill them, threatening to make devotees dead meat on the hook if they don't worship child molesting. So this was going on. Meanwhile, me and Sulochan began to assemble more of the missing documents, such as Prabhupada's letters, and these were not being published and not being given to the devotees. They were being hidden and suppressed. In 1986, they murdered Sulochan, and I was next on the list. I was going to be murdered by them, but this was thwarted by the FBI and the Berkeley police, especially Officer Joe Sanchez, to whom I credit with my being alive at this moment, because he came to the temple, he pounded on the door, he said, I want to talk to Paranjan. He said that every day he would come there. So they knew that the police were watching me and so on and so forth. And a scholar, Stilson Judah, he said to me, watch your back. These people will kill you. In 1986, Rameshwar was implicated in Sulochan's murder. Meanwhile, he was caught dating a minor-aged teenage female student. He was caught in the mall buying her a leather miniskirt. So this is the kind of gurus they had. They were dating their young teenage students. But after Sulochan's murder, this created a kind of catastrophe for them, so Rameshwar and Bhagavan resigned, but they walked off with allegedly hundreds and thousands of dollars. They just took a bunch of money and stole that from ISKCON and went off to set themselves up outside. And Bhavananda, their child molester guru, was once again suspended. So what is a suspended guru? You're Jesus, now you're being suspended for being engaged in homosexuality. So this was the idea of Sridhar Maharaj, Narayana Maharaj again. They said Jesus is suspended sometimes when he's caught having homosex with taxi drivers in the holy Dham. Meanwhile, Time magazine wrote Troubled Karma for the Krishnas. and Rolling Stone magazine wrote Dial Om for Murder, which detailed some of the crimes of the Sridhar Narayan governing body false gurus. In 1988, Gaur Govinda wrote a paper for the GBC Sridhar Narayan